I've always prided myself on being a consummate professional. 15 years as a clinical psychologist, and I'd never once blurred the lines between doctor and patient. But then Samantha Chen waltzed into my office, and my carefully constructed world began to crumble. It was a Tuesday, unseasonably warm for Newark in early spring. I remember because I'd forgone my usual blazer, opting instead for a light blouse that felt almost too casual for work. As I flipped through my appointment book, a name caught my eye. Samantha Chen, 2 p.m., first session. The door creaked open, and in she strode, all lithe grace and barely contained energy. Her black hair was pulled back in a messy bun, revealing delicate features and the most startling blue eyes I'd ever seen. "Dr. Parker?" she said, her voice a melody. "I'm Sam." I stood, extending my hand. "Julia, please, have a seat." As she settled into the leather armchair across from me, I couldn't help but notice the way she moved, fluid, like water given form. "So Sam," I began, pen poised over my notepad, "what brings you here today?" She took a deep breath, her slender fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "Anxiety," she said finally. It's affecting my work." "And what is it you do?" A smile lit up her face, transforming her from merely beautiful to breathtaking. "I'm a dancer and a choreographer." For the next hour, I listened as Sam poured out her story. The pressure of upcoming auditions, the struggle to keep her small dance studio afloat, the constant fear of not being good enough. But beneath it all, I sensed a passion so fierce it took my breath away. "Dance is everything," she said, her eyes shining. "When I'm on stage, it's like the whole world falls away. It's just me and the music and freedom," I finished softly. She looked at me, surprised. "Exactly." As our session drew to a close, I found myself reluctant to end it. "Same time next week?" I asked, scribbling in my calendar. Sam bit her lip, hesitating. "Actually, I have a performance this Friday at the Newark Arts Center. I know it's not exactly orthodox, but would you like to come? Maybe you could observe me in my element, get a better sense, of me." Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. Attending a patient's performance? It skirted dangerously close to ethical boundaries. But looking into those earnest blue eyes, I found myself nodding. "I'd be honored," I heard myself say. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't get Sam out of my head. Her grace, her vulnerability, the way her whole being seemed to light up when she talked about dance. It had been years since I'd felt this, drawn to someone. Not since Sarah, my ex-wife. I rolled over, burying my face in the pillow. This was ridiculous. Sam was my patient, nothing more. And I was straight, mostly straight, I groaned, feeling like a teenager grappling with her first crush. Friday arrived in a blur of appointments and paperwork. As I settled into my seat at the Arts Center, my heart was pounding. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience. And then, Sam. She emerged from the wings like a vision, her body moving in ways I didn't know were possible. Every gesture told a story. Every leap a declaration of freedom and defiance. I sat transfixed, barely breathing. As the final notes faded and Sam took her bow, our eyes met across the darkened auditorium. And in that moment, I knew I was in trouble. Later, at the small reception, I found myself gravitating towards her. "That was incredible," I said, handing her a glass of champagne. She beamed, flushed with exertion and triumph. "I'm so glad you came, Dr. Parker." "Julia," I corrected automatically. "Please call me Julia." A mischievous glint appeared in her eye. "Julia," she repeated, and damn if my name had ever sounded so good. "So, do you think you've gotten a better sense of me now?" I laughed, a bit too loudly. "Oh, I think I've only scratched the surface." The days following Sam's performance were a blur of conflicting emotions. I threw myself into work, hoping to drown out the memory of her lithe form moving across the stage, the warmth of her smile at the reception. But every time I closed my eyes, there she was. Our next session arrived all too quickly. Sam breezed in, all barely contained energy and dazzling smiles. "Julia," she said, dropping into the chair across from me. "I've been dying to ask, what did you really think of the show?" I swallowed hard, fighting to maintain my professional composure. "It was remarkable," I admitted. "You have an extraordinary gift, Sam." She beamed, but then her expression clouded. "I just wish the competition judges felt the same way." "Competition?" I leaned forward, intrigued. Sam nodded, her fingers twisting in her lap. There's this huge dance competition coming up, the prize money. It could save my studio. She took a shaky breath. But the anxiety, it's getting worse. I can barely sleep, let alone choreograph. I felt a pang in my chest. Tell me more about the studio, I prompted gently. For the next hour, Sam poured out her heart. The struggling dance studio she'd poured her life savings into. The kids she taught who looked at her like she hung the moon. The dreams of expanding, of making a real difference in the community. It's not just about the money, she said, her blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. It's about proving to myself that I can do this. That I'm not just wasting my life on a pipe dream. Before I could stop myself, I reached out and took her hand. You're not wasting anything, Sam. Your passion, your talent, they're gifts to the world. She looked up at me, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You really think so? I nodded, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. I could smell her perfume, something light and floral. I do. The moments stretched between us, electric. Then Sam cleared her throat, breaking the spell. I don't suppose. Would you want to come watch a rehearsal sometime? Maybe you could give me some tips on managing the anxiety while I'm dancing. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. But looking into those hopeful blue eyes, I found myself nodding. I'd like that. The next evening found me perched on a folding chair in Sam's small studio, watching as she moved through a series of complex steps. Her face was a mask of concentration, brow furrowed as she repeated the same sequence over and over. You're too tense, I called out after the 5th repetition. Your movements are perfect, but there's no joy in them. Sam stopped, panting slightly. That's the anxiety, she admitted. It's like I can feel the judge's eyes on me even when I'm alone. I stood, walking over to her. Close your eyes, I instructed softly. She complied, her long lashes fluttering shut. Now, take a deep breath. Feel the floor beneath your feet, the air on your skin. As I talked her through a quick relaxation exercise, I couldn't help but notice the graceful curve of her neck, the way her chest rose and fell with each breath. God, she was beautiful. Now, I said, my voice slightly husky, dance like no one's watching, like it's just you and the music. Sam's eyes snapped open, meeting mine for a brief, intense moment. Then she began to move. It was like watching a butterfly emerge from its chrysalis. Gone was the tension, the forced precision. In its place was pure, unbridled passion. Sam twirled and leapt, her body telling a story of joy and freedom and wild, untamed beauty. When the music faded, we were both breathing hard. Sam turned to me, her eyes shining. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The air between us felt charged, alive with possibilities I didn't dare name. Over the next few weeks, our sessions became a strange dance of their own. By day, we maintained the facade of doctor and patient, discussing anxiety management techniques and coping strategies. But in the evenings, in the sanctuary of Sam's studio, the lines blurred. I found myself attending more and more of her rehearsals, offering encouragement and support. We'd talk for hours afterward, about dance, about life, about our dreams and fears. With each passing day, I felt myself falling deeper into something I couldn't or wouldn't name. One night, after a particularly grueling practice session, Sam collapsed onto the floor next to me, her head resting against my shoulder. I don't know what I'd do without you, she murmured. I froze, my heart pounding. Sam, I began, but she cut me off. I know. Doctor-patient boundaries and all that. She lifted her head, meeting my gaze. But can't you feel it? This connection between us? I swallowed hard, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to close the distance between us, to finally taste those lips I'd been dreaming about for weeks. Sam, But before I could finish, the studio door burst open. A tall, handsome man strode in, his face like thunder. Sam? What the hell is going on here? Sam jumped to her feet. Marcus. I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow. I stood slowly, my mind racing. This must be Sam's dance partner, the one she'd mentioned in passing. The way he was looking between us, eyes narrowed with suspicion, made my stomach churn. Dr. Parker was just helping me with some relaxation techniques, Sam said quickly. For the competition. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Looked pretty relaxed to me. The tension in the room was palpable. I cleared my throat, grabbing my bag. I should go, I mumbled, avoiding Sam's pleading gaze. Good luck with the rehearsal. As I hurried out into the cool night air, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. What the hell was I doing? I was her doctor, for Christ's sake. I had no business feeling this way, no right to the jealousy that burned in my chest at the sight of Marcus's possessive stance. But as I climbed into my car, all I could think about was the warmth of Sam's body against mine, and the look in her eyes right before Marcus interrupted us. And I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that I was in way over my head. The days following the incident at Sam's studio were a special kind of hell. I threw myself into work, scheduling back-to-back appointments in a desperate attempt to keep my mind off her. But in the quiet moments, late at night when sleep eluded me, all I could think about was the warmth of her body against mine, the look in her eyes before Marcus burst in. Our next session was tense, to say the least. Sam sat across from me, her usual vibrancy dimmed, fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Julia, about the other night. I held up a hand, cutting her off. Sam, I think we need to talk about boundaries. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Boundaries, she repeated, her voice flat. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. What happened at the studio? It was inappropriate. I'm your doctor, and I crossed a line. I think. I think it might be best if we end our therapeutic relationship. Sam's eyes widened, filling with tears. What? No, Julia, please. I need you. The competition is in 2 weeks, and I can refer you to an excellent colleague, I interrupted, my heart breaking at the pain in her voice. Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She specializes in performance anxiety and... I don't want Dr. Mitchell, Sam burst out, jumping to her feet. I want you. The words hung in the air between us, charged with meaning. I closed my eyes, fighting for control. Sam, please, this isn't... We can't... When I opened my eyes, Sam was standing right in front of me, so close I could see the flecks of gray in her blue irises. Tell me you don't feel it too, she whispered. Tell me I'm imagining this connection between us. I swallowed hard, my resolve crumbling. I can't, I admitted. God help me, Sam, but I can't. For a moment we stood frozen, teetering on the edge of something vast and terrifying and exhilarating. Then Sam's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She glanced at it, her face falling. Shit, it's Marcus. I'm late for rehearsal. I stepped back, reality crashing back in. You should go. Sam hesitated, then nodded. This isn't over, Julia, she said softly before slipping out the door. I collapsed into my chair, head in my hands. What the hell was I doing? That night, a spring storm rolled in, bringing with it sheets of rain and booming thunder. I was curled up on my couch, nursing a glass of wine and trying to lose myself in a book, when my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Sam standing there, soaked to the skin and shivering. I'm sorry, she said, her teeth chattering. I didn't know where else to go. Without a word, I ushered her inside, grabbing a towel from the linen closet. As I helped her dry off, she explained in fits and starts. A fight with Marcus. Cruel words about her dancing, her dreams. Walking for hours in the rain, until she found herself on my doorstep. I'll make some tea, I said, trying to ignore the way her damp clothes clung to her curves. In the kitchen, I busied myself with kettles and mugs, hyper-aware of Sam's presence behind me. When I turned to hand her the steaming cup, I found her much closer than I expected. Julia, she murmured, her eyes searching mine. I can't stop thinking about you. I set the mug down with shaking hands. Sam, we can't. I'm your doctor, and you're... Not anymore, she interrupted. You ended our therapeutic relationship, remember? I'm not your patient now. I'm just... me. She stepped closer, and I could smell the rain on her skin, mingled with something uniquely Sam. Tell me you don't want this, she whispered. I closed my eyes, every fiber of my being screaming at me to push her away, to be the responsible one. But then her hand was on my cheek, so soft, so warm, and I was lost. Our lips met in a clash of thunder, and it was like coming home and stepping off a cliff all at once. Sam's mouth was soft, insistent, tasting of rain and possibility. I tangled my fingers in her damp hair, pulling her closer, drowning in the feel of her. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Sam's eyes were wide, her lips swollen. Wow, she breathed. I laughed, a bit hysterically. Yeah, wow. And then we were kissing again, stumbling towards the bedroom, hands roaming and exploring. Clothes fell away, and I marveled at the lean strength of Sam's dancer's body, the softness of her skin under my fingertips. What followed was a haze of sensation, the taste of salt on Sam's neck, the silk of her hair against my chest, the way she gasped my name like a prayer. We moved together in a dance as old as time, finding a rhythm that was uniquely ours. Afterward, as we lay tangled in my sheets, the storm still raging outside, reality began to creep back in. What are we doing, Sam? I whispered into the darkness. She propped herself up on one elbow, her face serious in the dim light. Something that feels right, she said simply. Something that feels inevitable. I sighed, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. It's not that simple. There are ethical considerations, professional ramifications, not to mention Marcus. Sam silenced me with a kiss. Can we just have this moment? She pleaded. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. I nodded, pulling her close. As Sam's breathing evened out into sleep, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. What had I done? What would this mean for my career, my life? And yet, holding Sam in my arms, feeling the steady beat of her heart against mine, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Morning brought with it a new set of challenges. Sam had a final rehearsal for the competition, and I had a full day of appointments. We parted with a lingering kiss and a promise to talk soon. But as I sat in my office, staring at my appointment book, a name jumped out at me. Rachel Evans, 2 p.m. My blood ran cold as I remembered Rachel, a former patient. Rachel, who was also a dancer. Rachel, who was competing against Sam in the upcoming competition. As the clock ticked closer to 2, my stomach churned with dread. How the hell was I going to navigate this mess? The moment Rachel Evans walked into my office, I knew I was screwed. She was all sleek confidence and barely concealed aggression. Her dancer's body coiled like a spring ready to snap. Dr. Parker, she purred, settling into the chair across from me. It's been a while. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the churning in my gut. Rachel, how have you been? She shrugged, a calculated gesture. Oh, busy, training. There's this big competition coming up. My heart sank. Of course she was here about the competition. The same competition that had Sam tied up in knots of anxiety. The competition that could make or break both their careers. For the next hour, I listened as Rachel talked about her preparations, her strategies, her determination to win at all costs. With every word, I felt myself sinking deeper into an ethical quagmire. I knew things about Sam, her strengths, her weaknesses, her deepest fears, that could give Rachel an edge. And Rachel, in turn, was revealing information that could benefit Sam. As Rachel was leaving, she paused at the door. I saw your new patient the other day, Samantha Chen? Her smile was razor sharp. She looks tense. I hope she's getting the help she needs. The threat was barely veiled. I watched Rachel saunter out, my mind reeling. What the hell was I going to do? That evening, I met Sam at her studio. She greeted me with a kiss that made my toes curl, but I gently pushed her away. Sam, we need to talk. Her face fell. That doesn't sound good. I took a deep breath. Rachel Evans came to see me today. Sam's eyes widened. Rachel. Your ex-patient Rachel. The one who's competing against you, yes. I ran a hand through my hair. Sam, this is bad, really bad. We spent the next hour dissecting the situation, the potential ramifications. If word got out about our relationship, it could be seen as me giving Sam unfair advantage. My career could be over. Sam's reputation in the dance world could be irreparably damaged. Maybe we should cool things off, Sam said finally, her voice small. Just until after the competition. The suggestion felt like a knife to my gut, but I knew she was right. It's probably for the best, I agreed reluctantly. We parted with a kiss that felt too much like goodbye. The next week was torture. I threw myself into work, but every patient felt like a potential minefield. I jumped at every phone call, half expecting it to be the ethics board demanding an explanation. Sam and I maintained a careful distance, communicating only through brief, professional texts. But late at night, when the city was quiet, I'd find myself staring at her name in my phone, finger hovering over the call button. It was 3 days before the competition when everything went to hell. I was in the middle of a session when my receptionist burst in, her face pale. "Dr. Parker, there's someone from the ethics board here to see you." My blood ran cold. In the waiting room stood Dr. Sarah Mitchell, head of the ethics committee, her expression grim. "Julia," she said, her voice clipped. "We need to talk." The next hour was a blur of accusations and denials. Someone had filed a complaint, alleging that I was having an inappropriate relationship with a patient and using insider information to influence a dance competition. "These are serious allegations, Julia," Sarah said, her eyes boring into mine. "If they're true, you could lose your license." I opened my mouth to deny everything, but the words stuck in my throat. How had it come to this? How had I let myself get so tangled up in Sam's world that I was willing to risk everything I'd worked for? "I need time," I said finally, "to prepare a formal response." Sarah nodded, but her expression was doubtful. "You have 48 hours, Julia. And in the meantime, you're suspended from practicing." I watched her leave, feeling like my world was crumbling around me. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Sam. "We need to talk, now." An hour later, we met in a small park, away from prying eyes. Sam's face was drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. "I heard," she said simply. "How?" I asked, bewildered. She shook her head. "The dance world is small, Julia. Word travels fast." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of our choices pressing down on us. "What are we going to do?" Sam whispered finally. I took her hand, public be damned. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we'll figure it out together." As the sun set over Newark, casting long shadows across the park, Sam and I talked, really talked, for the first time since that rainy night, about our fears, our dreams, the future we'd both been too scared to imagine. "I can't ask you to give up your career for me," Sam said, her voice choked with emotion. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to meet my eyes. "You're not asking, I'm choosing. Whatever happens, Sam, we're in this together." As we kissed, soft and bittersweet, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, this, us, was worth fighting for. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the day of the competition. Despite our agreement to keep our distance, I found myself slipping into the auditorium, heart pounding as I took a seat in the back. The tension in the air was palpable as dancer after dancer took the stage. And then, finally, it was Sam's turn. She emerged from the wings like a vision, all grace and fire. As the music swelled, she began to move, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. This wasn't the anxious, self-doubting Sam I'd first met in my office. This was an artist in her element, telling a story with every gesture, every leap. As she twirled and soared across the stage, our eyes met for the briefest moment, and in that instant, I saw everything we'd been through, everything we hoped for, reflected back at me. The audience erupted into applause as Sam took her final bow. I slipped out before the results were announced, my heart full to bursting. Whatever happened next, with the ethics board, with our careers, with us, I knew one thing for certain: loving Sam was the bravest, most authentic thing I'd ever done, and I wouldn't change it for the world. The aftermath of the competition was a whirlwind of emotions and consequences. Sam had won, her breathtaking performance leaving the judges and audience in awe, but our victory was short-lived as reality came crashing down around us. The ethics board investigation was in full swing, and the dance community was abuzz with rumors and speculation. I spent my days fielding calls from colleagues, trying to explain the unexplainable, while Sam grappled with the mixed reactions from her peers. "They're saying I cheated," she said one evening, her voice cracking as we sat in my dimly lit living room, "that I only won because I had inside information from you." I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "We know that's not true, Sam. Your talent won that competition, nothing else." But even as I said the words, doubt gnawed at me. Had I unconsciously given her an unfair advantage? Had my feelings for her compromised my professional judgment? The day of my hearing before the ethics board arrived all too quickly. I stood outside the imposing building, my hands shaking as I straightened my blazer. "You don't have to do this," Sam said softly, squeezing my hand. "We could leave, start over somewhere else." For a moment, I was tempted. The idea of running away, leaving behind the scrutiny and judgment, was alluring. But I shook my head. No, I need to face this. We both do. The hearing room was cold and sterile, a panel of stern-faced professionals staring down at me as I took my seat. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, her face a mask of disappointment, began the proceedings. Dr. Julia Parker, you stand accused of engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a patient and of using privileged information to influence the outcome of a professional dance competition. How do you plead? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Sam's gaze from the back of the room. Guilty to the first charge, I said, my voice steady, not guilty to the second. A murmur ran through the room. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Explain. And so I did. I laid bare the whole messy, beautiful truth of my relationship with Sam. How it had started as a professional interaction but had grown into something more. How I had struggled with my feelings, tried to maintain boundaries, and ultimately failed. I love her, I said simply, meeting Sarah's gaze. And I know that loving her was a breach of ethics. But I never, not once, used any information gained in our sessions to give her an advantage in the competition. The questioning went on for hours. Every aspect of my relationship with Sam was dissected, analyzed, judged. By the time it was over, I felt raw and exposed. As the board deliberated, Sam and I waited in tense silence. She reached for my hand, and I clung to her like a lifeline. When we were called back in, Sarah's face was grim. Dr. Parker, while we appreciate your honesty, the fact remains that you engaged in a sexual relationship with a patient. This is a serious breach of ethics. I nodded, bracing myself for the worst. However, Sarah continued, we find no evidence that you used your position to influence the dance competition. Taking into account your previously spotless record and the testimony of your colleagues, we have decided not to revoke your license. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. You will, however, be suspended from practice for 6 months. During this time, you will undergo ethics retraining and regular psychiatric evaluations. Additionally, you will be barred from treating performers or athletes for a period of 2 years. It was both better and worse than I had expected. My career wasn't over, but it was irrevocably changed. As we left the building, Sam was uncharacteristically quiet. Are you okay? I asked, worry gnawing at me. She stopped, turning to face me. Am I okay? Julia, you just risked everything for me. Your career, your reputation. How can you ask if I'm okay? I cupped her face in my hands. Because I love you, Sam. And none of this changes that. Her eyes filled with tears. But it changes everything else. Your practice, your life. We'll figure it out, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Together. But as the days passed, the strain began to show. Sam threw herself into her dancing with a fervor that bordered on obsession, while I grappled with the sudden emptiness of my days. The suspension left me adrift, questioning everything I thought I knew about myself and my profession. One night, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, Sam came home vibrating with nervous energy. I've been offered a spot in a touring company, she blurted out. 6 months, all across Europe. My heart sank. That's amazing, Sam. When do you leave? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Next week, if I go. The if hung between us, heavy with implication. You have to go, I said softly. This is a huge opportunity for you. Sam's eyes finally met mine, filled with a tumult of emotions. But what about us? What about everything we've been through? I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. We'll make it work. We have to. But as I held her, a part of me wondered if this was the beginning of the end. Had our love, born in the crucible of therapy sessions and ethical dilemmas, been doomed from the start? The week passed in a blur of preparations and stolen moments. We made love with a desperate intensity, as if trying to memorize each other's bodies, each other's souls. On the day of Sam's departure, we stood in the airport, clinging to each other as the final boarding call echoed through the terminal. I love you, Sam whispered, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. No matter what happens, remember that. I kissed her, pouring everything I couldn't say into that one gesture. Go be amazing, I said. I'll be here when you get back. As I watched her disappear through the security gate, I felt a chapter of my life closing. The past few months had been a whirlwind of passion, pain, and profound change. Now, as I faced an uncertain future, both personally and professionally, I couldn't help but wonder, had it all been worth it? Walking out of the airport into the bright Newark sunshine, I took a deep breath. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain: loving Sam had changed me, irrevocably and completely, and despite the cost, I wouldn't have it any other way. The months following Sam's departure were a study in contradictions. On one hand, my suspension gave me an abundance of free time, something I hadn't experienced since starting my practice. On the other, the days seemed to stretch endlessly, each hour a reminder of what I'd lost. I threw myself into my mandated ethics, retraining with a fervor that surprised even me. Perhaps it was a way to atone, to prove to myself and others that I was still the dedicated professional I'd always prided myself on being. Or maybe it was just a distraction from the Sam-shaped hole in my life. Our communication was sporadic at best. Time differences and grueling rehearsal schedules meant our calls were often rushed, our video chats pixelated and unsatisfying. I found myself staring at photos of us, wondering if the woman who smiled so freely in those moments was still the same person twirling across European stages. It was during one of these nostalgic reveries that my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dr. Parker? It's Rachel Evans. Can we talk?" My stomach dropped. Rachel, Sam's rival, my former patient, the catalyst for so much of the chaos in our lives. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. Rachel looked different than I remembered. Softer somehow, less sharp around the edges. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I owe you an apology." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. She took a deep breath. "I was the one who filed the complaint with the ethics board, about you and Sam." The admission hit me like a physical blow. "Why?" I managed to choke out. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I was jealous of Sam's talent, of your relationship. I thought if I could discredit her win, maybe I'd have another shot." She shook her head. "It was petty and cruel, and I'm so sorry." I sat back, my mind reeling. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make her feel a fraction of the pain and upheaval her actions had caused. But looking at her now, all I felt was a bone-deep weariness. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I'm leaving dance," she said quietly. And I couldn't go without trying to make things right. As I watched Rachel walk away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, certainly, but also an unexpected sense of closure. The puzzle pieces of the past few months were finally falling into place. That night, during our scheduled video call, I told Sam everything. Her face on the screen flickered through a range of emotions: shock, anger, and finally, a sort of rueful acceptance. "I guess we all make mistakes," she said softly. "Even the people who hurt us." Her grace in the face of Rachel's revelation struck me anew. This woman, who had every right to be bitter and angry, was choosing compassion instead. It made me fall in love with her all over again. But as the weeks wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between us. Our conversations became shorter, more perfunctory. The easy intimacy we'd shared seemed to be fading, replaced by a polite distance that scared me more than any argument could have. It all came to a head one rainy Tuesday evening. I was curled up on my couch, half-heartedly scrolling through job listings, when my phone lit up with Sam's face. "Julia," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." My heart sank. I'd been dreading this conversation, even as I'd known it was coming. "Okay," I said softly. "Talk to me." Sam took a shaky breath. I think we need to take a break." Even though I'd been expecting it, the word still felt like a punch to the gut. "A break," I repeated numbly. "It's just, everything's so complicated," Sam continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "My career is taking off, you're rebuilding yours. We're on different continents, living completely different lives. Maybe we need some time to figure out who we are without each other." I wanted to argue, to fight for us. But a small traitorous part of me wondered if she was right. Had our relationship, born in the intensity of therapy sessions and ethical dilemmas, ever had a chance of surviving in the real world? "If that's what you need," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. "I love you, Julia," Sam said at last. "I hope you know that." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment, letting the tears fall freely. It felt like the end of something profound, a closing of a chapter I wasn't ready to finish. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I threw myself into my ethics retraining with renewed vigor, desperate for any distraction from the ache in my chest. I reconnected with old friends, started volunteering at a local community center. Anything to fill the void Sam had left behind. It was during one of these volunteer shifts that I ran into Marcus, Sam's former dance partner. He looked as surprised to see me as I was to see him. "Dr. Parker," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "How are you?" I forced a smile. "I'm managing. You?" He shrugged. "Can't complain. The studio's doing well." He hesitated, then added, "Have you heard from Sam lately?" The question caught me off guard. "Not really," I admitted. "We're taking some time apart." Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. "She's doing great, you know. The tour's been extended. There's talk of a permanent position with the company." The news shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. Wasn't this what I'd wanted for her? To see her talents recognized, her dreams realized? But the idea of Sam building a life without me, thousands of miles away, felt like a physical ache. As I walked home that evening, the streets of Newark felt both familiar and utterly foreign. I'd lived here for years, built a career and a life, but now everything seemed tinged with memories of Sam. The park where we'd had our first real conversation outside of therapy. The little Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated her competition win. The dance studio where I'd watched her come alive, transforming from anxious patient to confident artist. Back in my apartment, I found myself staring at my phone, thumb hovering over Sam's number. Part of me wanted to call her, to beg her to reconsider, to remind her of everything we'd been through together. But another part, the part that had spent months in ethical retraining, knew that I needed to respect her decision, to give her the space she'd asked for, even if it killed me. Instead, I opened my laptop and began typing. Not a letter to Sam, but notes for a new research paper. The Ethics of Emotional Attachment in Therapeutic Relationships, a personal case study. As I wrote, pouring out the complex tangle of emotions and ethical dilemmas I'd navigated over the past year, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't an ending, I realized. It was a transformation. Whatever happened with Sam, whatever the future held, I was no longer the same person I'd been when she first walked into my office. I'd loved, I'd lost, I'd made mistakes and faced the consequences. But through it all, I'd remained true to the core of who I was, a healer, a listener, someone dedicated to understanding the human heart in all its messy complexity. As the first light of dawn crept through my window, I sat back, exhausted but oddly exhilarated. The paper was far from finished, but it felt like the start of something new. A way to take this painful, beautiful experience and use it to help others. To find meaning in the midst of heartbreak. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it. Changed, scarred, but ultimately stronger for having loved Sam Chen. The seasons changed. Leaves turned from green to gold to bare, and I found myself settling into a new rhythm. My suspension had ended, and I'd begun the slow process of rebuilding my practice. The paper I'd started that sleepless night had evolved into a series of lectures on ethical boundaries in therapy, drawing both praise and controversy in equal measure. It was after one such lecture that I found myself in a small gallery, sipping mediocre wine and making small talk with colleagues. The walls were adorned with abstract paintings, all sharp angles and bold colors that seemed to pulse with barely contained energy. "Quite something, aren't they?" a familiar voice said behind me. I turned, my heart stuttering in my chest. "Sam?" She stood there, more beautiful than ever, a shy smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Hey, Julia." For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Sam was here, in Newark, standing in front of me like some fever dream come to life. "What? How?" She gestured to the paintings around us. "They're mine, well, inspired by me. The artist is a friend I met in Paris." I looked at the paintings with new eyes, suddenly seeing the grace of a dancer's form in the abstract swirls and lines. "They're beautiful," I said softly. "Like you." Sam's cheeks flushed, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the vulnerable woman I'd first met in my office all those months ago. "Julia, But before she could finish, we were interrupted by a tall, elegant woman who swept Sam into an embrace. "Darling, there you are. You simply must meet the curator. He's absolutely mad about your pieces." Sam shot me an apologetic look as she was led away, leaving me standing alone, my mind reeling. She was back. She was here, and apparently, she was with someone new. I left the gallery in a daze, the cool night air doing little to clear my head. As I walked, memories of Sam flooded back, her laugh, the way she'd bite her lip when concentrating, the feel of her skin under my fingertips. I'd thought I was over her, thought I'd moved on. But seeing her again had ripped open wounds I didn't even know were still there. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. "Can we talk? S?" We agreed to meet at a small cafe near my office. As I waited, nervously fidgeting with my coffee cup, I tried to prepare myself for whatever was coming. But nothing could have prepared me for the sight of Sam walking through the door, looking both familiar and utterly changed. "Hi," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hi," I echoed, drinking in the sight of her. "You look good." She smiled, a bit sadly. "So do you. I've been following your work, you know. Those lectures you've been giving. They're incredible, Julia." I felt a flush of pride, mixed with a twinge of sadness. "Thanks, and congratulations on your art show. Those paintings were stunning." We fell into an awkward silence, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy between us. Finally, Sam took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology," she said. "The way I ended things. It wasn't fair to you." I shook my head. "You needed space. I understood." "Did you?" Her blue eyes met mine, searching. "Because I'm not sure I did. I thought I needed to find myself, to build a life separate from you and all the drama we'd been through. But the truth is, Julia, I've never felt more lost than I have these past few months." My heart raced, hope and fear warring in my chest. "What are you saying, Sam?" She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "I'm saying I made a mistake. That woman you saw me with last night? She's my agent. There's no one else, Julia. There couldn't be. It's always been you." I wanted to believe her, wanted to fall back into the warmth of her embrace. But the cautious professional part of me held back. "Sam, so much has changed. We've both been through so much." "I know," she said quickly. "And I'm not asking for everything to go back to how it was. I know we have a lot to work through. But I'm willing to try if you are." As I looked into her eyes, I saw the same mix of vulnerability and strength that had first drawn me to her. And I realized that despite everything, the ethical breaches, the public scrutiny, the months apart, my feelings for her hadn't changed. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's try." The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of rediscovery. We took things slow, meeting for coffee, long walks in the park, quiet dinners at home. We talked, really talked, about everything that had happened, the mistakes we'd both made, the growth we'd experienced apart. Sam had indeed been offered a permanent position with the dance company in Paris, but she'd turned it down. "I realized that success didn't mean much if I couldn't share it with the person I love," she told me one night as we cuddled on my couch. I, in turn, shared my fears about balancing our relationship with my professional ethics. We agreed to set clear boundaries, to always communicate openly about any concerns. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, of old insecurities rearing their heads. But there was also laughter and passion and a deepening understanding of each other that felt both familiar and thrillingly new. One evening, as we strolled hand in hand through the park where we'd had our first real conversation outside of therapy, Sam stopped suddenly. "I have an idea," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "What if we combined our passions, a dance therapy center, using movement to help people work through their emotional issues?" The idea took root, growing and evolving as we discussed it. We spent hours brainstorming, researching, planning. It felt like the perfect synthesis of our skills and experiences, a way to turn the challenges we'd faced into something positive. As we worked to bring our vision to life, I marveled at how far we'd come. From doctor and patient to lovers to partners in every sense of the word. We'd weathered storms that would have broken most couples, emerged stronger and more committed than ever. The night before the grand opening of our center, Sam and I stood in the empty studio, surrounded by the promise of new beginnings. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, squeezing her hand. She turned to me, her smile radiant. "With you, I'm ready for anything." As we sealed the promise with a kiss, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles we might face, I knew that together, Sam and I could dance through anything life threw our way. The morning of our dance therapy center's grand opening dawned bright and clear, a perfect Newark spring day. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer and trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach, I caught sight of Sam's reflection behind me. "Nervous?" she asked, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her chin on my shoulder. I leaned back into her embrace, drawing strength from her presence. "A little," I admitted. "You?" She grinned, that mischievous spark in her eye that I'd fallen in love with all those months ago. Terrified, but in a good way. As we made our way to the center, hand in hand, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. The woman beside me was both achingly familiar and thrillingly new, my Sam, but stronger, more confident, her talents now tempered with hard-won wisdom. The center itself was a labor of love, every detail carefully chosen to create a welcoming, healing space. Soft, warm colors on the walls, floors designed to absorb the impact of dancing feet, and floor-to-ceiling mirrors that could be covered with curtains for more private sessions. As our first clients began to arrive, I felt a surge of pride mixed with trepidation. This was it, the moment where our dreams and hard work would be put to the test. The morning flew by in a whirlwind of introductions, orientations, and our first official sessions. I watched in awe as Sam led a group of anxiety sufferers through a series of gentle movements, her voice soothing as she encouraged them to dance out their fears. In my own session with a couple struggling with communication issues, I found myself incorporating elements of dance in ways I never would have imagined before meeting Sam. "Mirror each other's movements," I instructed softly. "Try to anticipate where your partner will go next." As I watched the couple slowly begin to sync up, their movements becoming more fluid and connected, I felt a lump form in my throat. This was more than just therapy or dance. It was a new language of healing, one that Sam and I had created together. During our lunch break, Sam and I snuck away to the small office we shared, collapsing onto the worn leather couch with matching sighs of exhaustion and exhilaration. "We did it," Sam breathed, her eyes shining. "We actually did it." I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "We're just getting started," I reminded her, but I couldn't keep the grin off my face. As the day wore on, I found myself constantly seeking Sam out, our eyes meeting across the room in moments of shared triumph or silent support. We moved around each other with an easy grace, anticipating each other's needs and complementing each other's strengths. It wasn't until our last client had left, and we were locking up for the night, that the full weight of what we'd accomplished hit me. Standing in the empty studio, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the floor, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. "Julia?" Sam's voice was soft with concern. "Are you okay?" I turned to her, not bothering to hide the tears in my eyes. "I'm more than okay," I said. I'm happy. Truly, deeply happy." She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, pulling me into a fierce embrace. "Me too," she whispered against my hair. As we swayed together, not quite dancing but unable to stay still, I thought about all the twists and turns that had led us to this moment. The ethical dilemmas, the painful separations, the leap of faith it had taken to build this new life together. "What are you thinking about?" Sam asked, pulling back slightly to meet my gaze. I smiled, reaching up to trace the curve of her cheek. "I'm thinking about how grateful I am for second chances, for the courage to admit when we're wrong, and the strength to fight for what's right." Sam's eyes softened, and I saw in them the same mix of love, respect, and passion that had drawn us together from the start. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am," she said, "to have found a partner who challenges me, supports me, and loves me, flaws and all." As our lips met in a kiss that felt both familiar and thrillingly new, I knew that this, us, our center, our shared vision, was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt. Ethical lines to navigate, professional boundaries to maintain, personal demons to face. But standing there in Sam's arms, surrounded by the fruits of our labor and the promise of all that was yet to come, I felt ready for anything. We had danced through fire to get here and emerged stronger for it. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility. Would our center thrive? Would we continue to find new ways to blend our passions and skills? Would the delicate balance we'd struck between our personal and professional lives hold up under pressure? As we left the studio hand in hand, stepping out into the warm Newark night, I realized that the answers to those questions didn't matter as much as I'd once thought. What mattered was that we were facing them together. 2 women who had found in each other not just a lover, but a true partner in every sense of the word. "Ready to go home?" Sam asked, giving my hand a squeeze. I looked at her, my patient turned lover turned soulmate, and felt a surge of joy so intense it nearly took my breath away. With you? I said, echoing her words from so long ago. I'm ready for anything. As we walked away, the city alive with possibility around us, I couldn't help but feel that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Our dance, beautiful, complex, and ever-evolving, was far from over, and I, for one, couldn't wait to see where the music would take us next.